Disclaimer: some of the stories featured in this video are graphic or disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I am not a police officer, but rather a dispatcher who is usually responsible for sending them to handle the more unsettling situations. The most memorable experience I had was when I received multiple 911 calls from a staticky voice, all coming from the same cell phone number throughout the night. We couldn't make out anything being said, and we were unable to obtain any information from the cell phone company since the calls were coming from an unknown location with only the identifier tower cord. There was constant static on the line, with the occasional sound of what seemed like an elderly woman's voice, although she never said anything except hello. After 4 hours of receiving calls from this number, we were finally able to obtain Phase 2 coordinates, allowing us to pinpoint the location of the cell phone. This helped us to communicate better with the woman on the phone, who was now able to hear us more clearly as well. She informed us that her heat was not working and that she was feeling extremely cold. She seemed confused about her address, so I read out the information that was displayed on my screen. She responded that it sounded correct, so I sent a deputy to investigate and help her out. After arriving at the location, the deputy called in to say that the address was a cemetery in the middle of nowhere, with no signs of any houses or inhabitants in the area. He tried to contact the woman again, but she did not answer the phone. We were unable to find any further information or reach her again, and we still discuss this mysterious and eerie call to this day.
I am no longer a police officer, but I used to be, and what I am about to describe happened over 10 years ago. I received a domestic disturbance call at around 3 a.m. A woman who was going through a divorce told me that she believed her soon-to-be ex-husband was trying to scare her. We were standing in the kitchen, which had a wall of windows in the breakfast area without any curtains. It is worth mentioning that the house was over 100 years old but well maintained. I noticed a lot of toys all over the floor, such as dolls and children's bikes. When I asked her why she thought her husband was trying to scare her, she said that she had moved into this place a couple of weeks earlier, and this was the third night that she heard something in the kitchen in the middle of the night. The house had a second-story master bedroom, and she went on to explain that all the toys that were currently around us were not out when she went to bed. Although I am not religious and don't believe in much of anything, the second she said that, I got really creeped out, realizing that we were not only standing at ground zero but also anything or anyone outside the windows could see every move we made. She would hear noises for a few minutes and would come downstairs to find nothing but toys from the box she kept in the kitchen area all over the place. I had to check the whole house because the logical explanation was that someone was messing with her, but all windows and doors were locked, and there was nothing out of place or unusual in the yard. However, I started feeling even more creeped out because the house just felt off at that point, as if we were being watched. She told me who her husband was, and I happened to know him vaguely from school way back in the day. I helped her calm down and suggested that she go see her husband, who lived several miles away. I went over to his house and found nothing out of the ordinary. 2 nights later, I was patrolling his subdivision when I received the same call. I first drove by his house and banged on the door, and he was there. I then raced over to her house and found the same scenario and story about the husband. When I told her that he was home and I had just talked to him, she went white and freaked out a little. She said she did not want to believe that something or someone was in her house. I had to clear the house again, with her holding on to me like we were in a horror film, and again found nothing. At this point, she was done, packed a bag, and left for her mother's with her child. She moved out a day later when the sun came up. We never figured out what happened, and she had no issues in her new place. Funny enough, some good friends of mine live there now, and they have never experienced anything like that. I have been there several times without feeling whatever I felt those 2 nights.
I have another story to tell, but again, I want to emphasize that I am no longer a police officer. This happened many years ago when I received a call at around 1 a.m. from a frantic old man who woke up to use the restroom and found his wife missing from their bed. He explained that his wife had cancer and had been refusing treatment. This man was in a terrible state, having been married for over 50 years, and fearing the worst. We began searching the house, and he came out of a room to tell me that his .38 revolver was missing, which put him in a state of full-blown panic. We cleared the house and headed outside to his 30-acre property, which was deathly quiet. This was typical for a country life, with only about 2 acres cleared, and the rest wooded. While I was talking to him and trying to calm him down, I noticed the shadow of what appeared to be a woman in a nightgown at the edge of the woods. She was just standing there, not moving, but watching us. However, I couldn't tell what she was doing other than observing us. At that moment, a gunshot rang out, and I could see the outline of her face in the flesh. I don't know why, but it was so creepy, and I couldn't really make out what she looked like, but the flash of illumination situation in that shadow was eerie. In an instant, I saw the shadow fall, and the man's face showed the realization of what had just happened. His heart literally broke, and he fell to the ground, sobbing. I raced over to where the woman fell and found her dead. Realizing there was nothing I could do for her, I went back to the man and tried to comfort him. I never got the whole story of how bad the cancer was, but I can only guess that she did not want to receive treatment in their family home. I have so many terrible stories like this, and I am so glad that I got out of that profession. I received a call about a repeat domestic abuser who was a notorious wife-beater.
He had been arrested multiple times and would always surrender immediately when the police arrived.
Despite his reputation, he was only a tough guy when it came to his 100-pound wife.
After one of his arrests, I served him with a restraining order, but he threatened to kidnap and kill her for having him arrested.
The next night, I received a call from 911 that his ex-wife was on the phone with a friend when he broke into her house.
Her friend was still on the line and could hear everything.
The 911 dispatcher put out the address, and I immediately headed out to the middle of nowhere where they lived.
The friend reported that it had become quiet all of a sudden. I knew the only road that led to the next county, and I was driving 110 miles per hour. I had another car head to the house, but I suspected he was heading out of town. Sure enough, after 10 minutes of driving like a bat out of hell, I caught up to him.
He pulled over and jumped out of the car, yelling at me.
I knew something was off because he was never confrontational.
I arrested him and searched his car, but his wife was nowhere to be found.
I searched his trunk and found her, alive but handcuffed and duct-taped. I had never wanted to beat someone up more than in that moment. I got her out and she was fine, but petrified. She reported that he had told her he was taking her where no one would ever find her. I was able to get him 15 years in prison, but he is probably out by now. I hope she has moved on with her life, as closure is important to me, but I usually never find out what happens to the victims after the fact.
I received a call at around 9 p.m. regarding a suicide in a nice little neighborhood of starter homes. When I arrived, I found a young wife in her 22nd, crying uncontrollably in the driveway with her month-old baby. She agreed, and when she came home, she found him dead. I instructed her to stay outside and went inside to assess the situation. In these situations, you pay attention to every little thing, and the silence can be deafening. She didn't tell me how he committed suicide, but as soon as I entered the house and closed the door, I could hear a creaking sound that I knew was a rope swinging back and forth. With no background noise, it was the creepiest sound ever. I slowly approached the laundry room where the noise was coming from and first saw a foot moving back and forth. I continued until I saw the rest of him. He was clearly gone. She had tried to take him down from the rope, but couldn't. She ran out of the house and called 911. The poor girl was devastated to not only lose her husband and have to raise a 1-month-old baby on her own, but also the fact that he did it in their house. Life can be sad sometimes,